Isaac Howard isn't expected to sign his entry-level deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'll make a case for why the Blackhawks should make a run at the former first-round pick.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman too, but make sure to check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Smash that like button, hop in the comment section below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It's the best way that you can show some support, and it's all 100% free, won't cost you anything, and helps me out in a massive way in growing my platform. But happy Thursday, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. To begin the show here today, let's get into a spicy little conversation around Tampa Bay Lightning 2022 first-round pick and reigning Hobey Baker Award trophy winner as the best player in men's college hockey, Isaac Howard, who is reportedly returning to Michigan State along with Trent Augustine for their senior seasons to try and win a national championship, which is definitely a little bit of a shocking development considering how dominant Howard was in his junior season with the Spartans. But that's because apparently after such a sound junior campaign, Howard wanted to sign his entry-level deal and make the leap to pro hockey and join the Lightning. But unfortunately, because of Tampa Bay's cap situation, they couldn't afford to bring Howard on late in the season. And because of that, there's been a little bit of a rift in the relationship. General manager Jean Bribois basically all but confirmed that they're not going to be signing Howard to his entry-level deal. And with that being the case, definitely wanted to talk about whether the Blackhawks should try and trade for him, as it seems likely that's the route the Lightning are going to go rather than just lose him for nothing in free agency come August 15th of next year. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Isaac Howard, what he's been doing in college hockey the last 3 years and how great he was this past season for Michigan State, wanted to get into a breakdown on him and his game here first before I talk about whether the Blackhawks should make a run for him. Howard is a 5'11", 190-pound winger who just turned 21 years old back in March. His freshman year of college hockey, he actually spent with the University of Minnesota Duluth, so was a teammate of now former Blackhawks prospect Dominic James. Is like Isaac Howard next year, though. James isn't expected to sign his ELC with the Blackhawks, but 17 points for James in his freshman season with the Bulldogs in 35 games, but then obviously transferred to Michigan State ahead of his sophomore season, which wound up working wonders for his development. Had a really sound sophomore year, 36 points in 36 games, 8 goals and 28 assists, helped Michigan State win the Big Ten regular season title, also helped the United States win gold at the World Juniors, and what a showing it was there for Isaac Howard in that World Juniors. 9 points in 7 games, 7 goals and 2 assists, one of the best, if not the best goal scorer on that team, including 2 huge goals in the gold medal game. And then, as I mentioned, went on to win the Hobey Baker Trophy Award as the top player in men's college hockey this year as a junior. 26 goals and 26 assists. The playmaking was obviously on display as a sophomore, but we saw a huge uptick in his goal scoring this year, which I think was really noteworthy. 5th in the country in points, 1st in points per game. I thought, honestly, that Ryan Leonard was going to win the Hobey Baker Award, but definitely a rightful winner here in Isaac Howard, and it's scary to think about what he's going to do in that league next year as a senior, considering how dominant he's already been the last 2 years. So as far as whether the Blackhawks should show interest, in my opinion, yes, they absolutely should be calling up the Tampa Bay Lightning to see what the asking price would be. Now, I'm sure they're not going to be alone in that conversation, so they're probably going to have to throw the Lightning a pretty sweet deal, I'd imagine, and I'll get into that here in just a second. But I know there are probably some people concerned about Isaac Howard's size, being that he's 5'11", 190 pounds, and the Blackhawks are filled with undersized skill players like Connor Bedard, like Frank Nazar. Oliver Moore plays with a lot of grit, but he's not really a player with plus size. The Blackhawks, that's really what they're missing in their forward group. However, what they're definitely missing as well, Hawks fans, is more skill on the wing, and Isaac Howard absolutely presents that. Good goal scoring ability, upside with his skating that should help him translate to that next level. And haven't mentioned yet, he was a teammate of Artem Levshinov's at Michigan State last year, 2 years ago, and has played with a lot of Blackhawks prospects for the United States in the past at the World Juniors, and just previous experiences while playing internationally for the United States development program. Like, Isaac Howard, I think, would fit in wonderfully with what the Blackhawks are trying to do with their forward group, provide a lot more speed and skill. He checks off that box. He's familiar with a lot of these prospects, and they really just need more talent overall on the wing. So I 100% think the Blackhawks should make a run, at least show interest, kick the tires, see what the asking price is for Isaac Howard. Yes, they do need players with size in their top six as well, but that's something that they can hopefully address in free agency or maybe even in this year's NHL draft as well. So definitely think they should pursue Isaac Howard. As far as what the cost would be, considering Howard was a late first-round selection in 2022, obviously has been a really strong player in college hockey these last 2 seasons. I assume Tampa would like to try and recoup that first-round pick that they spent on him a few seasons ago, and I'd imagine there's going to be enough interested parties that the top suitor will probably have to give up a late first, if I had to guess, right here, right now. So for the Blackhawks, and by the way, the Tampa Bay Lightning do not have a first-round pick for the next 3 NHL drafts. So that's definitely something they could show interest in, especially as this core of theirs hasn't found a lot of success in the Stanley Cup playoffs ever since winning back-to-back titles. I do wonder if they could be starting to want to stockpile more draft picks than they have, and that is something I believe they would have interest in. The Blackhawks obviously have that luxury of having a ton of picks to give away in trades like this. So whether it be a 2025 late first that they have this year from the Toronto Maple Leafs, whether it be a 34th overall selection and a little bit of a sweetener, I think the Blackhawks have the type of weaponry, whether it be via prospects or draft picks, for the Tampa Bay Lightning to be interested in. I do wonder, with the Blackhawks potentially needing more players to help fill their roster and help them get to the salary cap's floor, I do wonder if they could potentially, I wonder if an early second and maybe a defenseman prospect for Isaac Howard and something could be a trade package on the table potentially. And we've seen the Blackhawks and the Tampa Bay Lightning work together in the past to get trades done, with Brent Seabrook and the Tyler Johnson trade, obviously Brandon Hagel, right? So these two parties are very familiar with each other. I do think it's definitely in the cards, Blackhawks fans. But one player that I thought was interesting, just looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning's Puckpedia, signed for 2 more years, 30 years old at $5 million per year, good goal scoring upside, decent skating ability on the wing where the Blackhawks definitely need more help. It's Oliver Bjorkstrand. I wonder if Isaac Howard and Oliver Bjorkstrand as a package for, the Blackhawks, I've talked about it for a while, kind of feels like they have one too many left-handed defensemen. I wonder if a second round pick, maybe that 34th overall that they have this year, along with maybe Wyatt Kaiser or Ethan Del Mastro potentially. Not that I'm wanting to trade either of those two guys, but it seems like at some point something has to give on the Blackhawks back end. And I do wonder if that could be a trade chip involved here to acquire Isaac Howard. It's going to be fascinating to see what's going to happen with the Lightning 2022 first round pick over these next couple of months. And if he doesn't wind up getting traded and ends up hitting the free agent market next summer, August 15th, you imagine there's going to be a lot of suitors, and he'll have his pick of the litter where he's going to go. Obviously, if the Blackhawks want to trade for him, they're going to have to talk with him first and make sure he's willing to sign his entry-level deal with the team. You're not going to trade for him if he's not going to be willing to do that. But I think this would be a good situation for Isaac Howard coming into an organization that would give him opportunities, starting to build something from the ground floor with a lot of players in his age group who he's familiar with. I feel like this would be an attractive place for Isaac Howard. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the Blackhawks potentially pursuing Isaac Howard through the trade market here this summer. They certainly have, in my opinion, the draft capital and the prospect pool to make something work with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But there are my thoughts on Isaac Howard, as rumors are swirling about him potentially getting dealt here this summer. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll dive into Scott Wheeler's 2025 mock draft. Real quick, though, I do got to talk to you all first about Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Well, then go and crack into a great source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. And Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, with each 1 ounce serving having 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily nutritional value. Plus, they're packed with fiber to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And who doesn't love a good pistachio? I know I certainly do. I could literally sit there eating them and cracking them all day long. And the satisfying crack of opening each shell, it's like a perfect mini snack meditation. And whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids at school or practice, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch by visiting Wonderful Pistachios right now, wonderfulpistachios.com right now, in order to learn more. Again, that's wonderfulpistachios.com to go and check it out today. Segment 2, we are officially in mock draft season, Blackhawks fans, and I got another one to go through here today from none other than Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. After the 2025 NHL Draft Lottery, we know the Hawks are slotted into that number 3 spot, and immediately following the results of the draft lottery, I broke down Corey Pronman of The Athletic's mock top 16. I mentioned I'm going to be going through a handful of mock drafts here on the show leading up to June 27th when the 2025 NHL draft goes down, just to give us all a sense of what the top industry leaders, scouts, and analysts are expecting to go down. And most of these guys, by the way, are going to be giving updated mock drafts after the combine. I'm sure they'll have one final official mock in like the week leading up to the NHL draft. So there's going to be several that I'm going to be going through here this summer. And the second one I'm going to get to right now is from none other than Scott Wheeler. Like Corey Pronman, I'm just going to be going through his mock top 16 here today. As again, I've referenced, there's going to be several different mock drafts coming out. A lot of things are going to be shaken up in that bottom like 16 of this year's draft, because after like the top 13, 14, it's really wide open in my opinion. And I expect all the mock drafts to have a lot of different things. So I'm firmly just kind of paying attention to this top tier of the 2025 draft class. But starting things off for Scott Wheeler's mock top 16, his first mock draft with the number 1 overall selection, Wheeler has the New York Islanders, like Corey Pronman, selecting Matthew Schaefer. However, he did talk about James Higgins, and with the team not having a general manager, things are a little bit up in the air for the organization right now. And thinking about their last number 1 pick, John Tavares, a Toronto boy, he ended up leaving them to go and sign with Toronto. Well, with James Higgins, this is his home. He trains there. He lives there. New York Islanders would be his life. So it does feel like it would be a really good fit. However, Matthew Schaefer is undoubtedly a really good fit for them as well, considering they have one of the thinnest defensive prospect pools in the entire league. There's some questions going on about Noah Dobson. So they definitely need help on the forward side of things too, but selecting a top-tier defenseman like Matthew Schaefer to stabilize their blue line makes a lot of sense. So I agree with Scott Wheeler here that Matthew Schaefer's probably going number 1. At number 2, Scott Wheeler has the San Jose Sharks also selecting Michael Misa, which is tough news for us Blackhawks fans. However, as I mentioned on yesterday's show when going through Michael Misa's 2025 NHL draft profile, go and check that out if you haven't done so already. My first 2 NHL draft profiles have now been released. Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa rightfully have started things off. And I mentioned when going through Misa's draft profile yesterday that there's some speculation out there that Misa isn't solidified as the top forward in this year's draft, which seems absolutely crazy to me. And Scott Wheeler kind of had a comment on that same thought. As he mentioned, it might not be a slam dunk that Misa winds up going number 2. And he even went as far to say is that Caleb Denoye is the more practical pick to be the number 2 center, considering what Macklin Celebrini brings to the table for San Jose at number 1. However, Wheeler finished things off by saying that Misa undoubtedly has the highest upside, which I firmly agree with, and that he's the likely outcome because of it, which I also firmly agree with. So sadly, 2 mock drafts that have Michael Misa going number 2, but is noteworthy that, according to some industry leaders, doesn't seem as much of a slam dunk as we have all expected. Now, at number 3, the Chicago Blackhawks, after Corey Pronman had them selecting Porter Martone in his mock draft, Scott Wheeler has the Hawks selecting Anton Frandel. And he also mentioned he thinks it comes down to 3 players truly for the Blackhawks. Michael Misa, who obviously I don't expect to be on the board at number 3, but if he is, he's going to be the pick. But if the more likely outcome holds through, if Misa's not available, it's probably down to Caleb Denoye and Anton Frandel, both players with plus size who can play the center ice position and have a 2-way game. It is a need for the Chicago Blackhawks, so I certainly understand them going this route. For me personally, I haven't fully dove into his profile yet, so haven't turned over every leaf, haven't gone through every single nook and cranny, but Anton Frandel isn't someone who necessarily moves the needle a ton to me at number 3. But Wheeler did say Frandel seems more likely, but Denoye is definitely rising in terms of his draft stock. So 3-way race, according to Scott Wheeler, for the Hawks at number 3 between Caleb Denoye, Anton Frandel, and Michael Misa. Obviously, I think we all would prefer Misa, but I wouldn't get our hopes up too much despite what some of the latest rumors have said. At number 4, next, Scott Wheeler has the Utah Mammoth selecting Caleb Denoye, which is interesting because actually, I'll leave that for the next one. Denoye going number 4 at Utah, considering they have a lot of undersized forwards. That was the reasoning why Wheeler had them selecting, had Utah selecting Denoye here, which I do think makes a lot of sense if Frandel is off the board. Probably a sizable player is what they want to go with. And that leaves the Nashville Predators in a really peculiar position at number 5. Like Corey Pronman, Scott Wheeler has them selecting James Higgins. However, Wheeler also mentioned, just like Pronman did and just like I did on the show, Nashville's history of wanting to take players who have a little bit of an edge, some size to them, and that's not necessarily James Higgins' forte. However, Higgins, to me, and I think to most scouts and analysts, has the best upside of any player left on the board here, should it shake out this way in the top 4, and because of that, Nashville has no choice but to take him at number 5, even if he's not historically the type of mold they want to take out of their center iceman. At number 6, Wheeler has the Philadelphia Flyers selecting Brady Martin. They definitely still need more help on the offensive side of things. They need help all over, quite honestly. Even though they took Jet Luchenko last year, Wheeler thinks the possibility of having him and Brady Martin down the middle would be a really good 1-2 punch, good enough that Philadelphia wouldn't be able to pass that up. Next, at 7, the Boston Bruins. Wheeler has them selecting Jake O'Brien. He thinks it's probably down to O'Brien or Martone here to kind of be that next forward piece that they want to add to the puzzle. And because O'Brien is a center, whereas Martone is a winger, that's why Wheeler ultimately had the Bruins going with O'Brien. Then at number 8, the Seattle Kraken are the ones who end up selecting Porter Martone, with Wheeler mentioning this really seems like the farthest that he could go, and even mentioned he'd obviously be a potential fit for the Philadelphia Flyers at number 6 as well, The only reason he had them selecting Brady Martin is because he plays the center ice position, which is more valuable than the wing, which is where Porter Martone plays. But this really does feel like the floor for Martone, in my opinion, and according to Scott Wheeler. He did mention, though, if Martone doesn't wind up making it to this place, he wouldn't be surprised if they could go with a defenseman, because if Martone's off the board, they could wind up having to go with a D. At number 9, Wheeler has the Buffalo Sabres selecting Roger McQueen, who I think would be a really interesting 1-2 forward punch up front with Tage Thompson, considering the size and offensive ability that both of them possess. And I do think it makes a lot of sense, considering we've seen Buffalo go with undersized forwards in the draft these last couple years, and Zach Benson, Consta Helenius, they could use a guy with size, and I don't expect them to go defenseman in the top 10 here this year. I think they could add another good forward piece. So Roger McQueen makes a lot of sense. Then at number 10, Wheeler has the Anaheim Ducks selecting Radim Murtka. Good defensive prospect pool, but they don't have a lot of right-handed defensemen in the system. Murtka, good size, good skating ability. Wheeler has him as the second defenseman off of the board and thinks it's probably between him and the guy who he has mocked next to the Pittsburgh Penguins in Victor Eklund. I think if Eklund were a center iceman, he'd probably be in that conversation with Brady Martin and Jake O'Brien at 6, 7, 8, in my opinion. I think he has a really intriguing skill set, but he unfortunately plays the wing, and all the center icemen are gone for the Pittsburgh, or at least all of the top end center icemen, as it's pretty center heavy here in the top 10, would be gone at this point with the way the mock has shaped out. So Pittsburgh going best available is Victor Eklund, even though they probably want a center. At number 12, Wheeler has the Rangers selecting Kashawn Aitchison. Rangers going defense, I think is pretty expected, and Aitchison or Jackson Smith would be the two defensemen expected to go in this range. 13, Wheeler has the Red Wings selecting Justin Cabot. If Murtka falls, that's where Wheeler thinks he could land, and would make a lot of sense with how the Red Wings historically love European prospects under Steve Yzerman. But with Murtka having gone to the Anaheim Ducks at number 10 in this mock draft, he has Detroit going with best player available, which is Justin Cabot. Then at number 14, Columbus, Jackson Smith, third defenseman off of the board. Sounds likely that they're going to take a defenseman with one of their 2 first-round picks in this year's draft, and Smith is definitely the best available with Aitchison, Murtka, and obviously Matthew Schaefer off of the board. And then at number 15, the Vancouver Canucks select Braden Cooties. Well, this is really when the draft seems to open up, like I mentioned earlier. After that top 14, it kind of seems wide open. And then at 16, to round things out, the Montreal Canadiens, who will have back-to-back picks, select Lyndon Lakovich. Could also be, as Wheeler mentioned, Carter Bear or Malcolm Spence, who I know is a prospect a lot of us Blackhawks fans are interested in, as he played with a couple of Blackhawks prospects up in the OHL here this season. Let me know in the comment section down below, though, what you think about these first 2 mocks. Scott Wheeler having Anton Frondel going at number 3, Corey Pronman having Porter Martone. Out of those 2, which would you prefer? And if your answer is neither, let me know who your preferred pick is at number 3 down below in the comment section. But that's going to take care of the top 16 in Scott Wheeler's first 2025 mock draft. Coming up in just a moment here, Hawks fans, I'll dive into a quick update on several head coaches being hired. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out our new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, right up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Go and get national coverage with local expertise with Locked On NHL Game Night, which you can easily find right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, lots of updates to get into here regarding NHL head coaching vacancies, with a slew of new coaches being hired in the past couple of days, in addition to an update that I definitely got to get into on the Blackhawks vacant head coaching search. First and foremost, what I want to start with, haven't talked about it here on Locked On Blackhawks yet, but of course, Joel Quenneville has returned to the NHL, hired by the Anaheim Ducks to be their new head coach. And throughout the Blackhawks coaching search of their own, I've had several people in the comment section suggest, why not bring Joel Quenneville back? And quite honestly, if you're suggesting that, I don't really even think it deserves an answer, because it's pretty obvious why that is obviously not going to happen here in Chicago. But I did expect Joel Quenneville at some point to return to the NHL after we saw, Stan Bowman get reinstated and brought on to be the Edmonton Oilers' new general manager. Between he and Joel Quenneville, to me, and this is my personal opinion, I'm not really trying to steer the conversation this way, but with Stan Bowman being a higher up to Joel Quenneville, I think they're both obviously at fault and did wrongs during the whole Kyle Beach, Bradley Aldrich situation back in 2010. But with Bowman being a higher up to Joel Quenneville, obviously they're both wrong, but I think Bowman is the more wrong of the two. And between those two, he's the more unattractive piece. Like Stan Bowman, yes, he made some decent trades and some okay deadline additions. I'm not going to sit here and say he didn't matter to the Blackhawks dynasty, but it's not like he was as integral as I think everyone truly believes that he was, right? And he made a lot of disastrous moves that put the Blackhawks in this terrible position, and is truly the reason why they've been at the bottom of the standings the last 3 years, because they left them no choice but to go in a full-scale rebuild, because that's how bad he messed it up. With Stan Bowman returning to the NHL and getting another crack to be a GM, I knew it was only a matter of time for Joel Quenneville to get reinstated and get another opportunity, because he is the second winningest coach in NHL history, albeit all of his success, most of his success has come in a different era of the NHL, which I think makes for an interesting conversation in terms of whether he'll be as good of a head coach in today's game. I knew he was going to get an opportunity one way or the other. For me personally, I'm not surprised because it's the NHL. I think it would have been proper if Joel Quenneville had just kind of ridden off into the sunset. This seemed like a good opportunity for him to go. He doesn't really have much left to prove in this league other to go and try and be the winningest coach of all time. He's got the Stanley Cups. He's got the resume. So I personally would have, liked to see him not come back. I don't know if he necessarily deserves to be an NHL head coach again, but I'm not going to be ridiculous. I know the way that the NHL works. I firmly expected him to get this opportunity at some point down the line, and now is official that he's back as he's the new head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, a team that a lot of people are expecting to make a good leap next year, even prior to hiring Quenneville, like with the amount of young talent that they have, the nice play that they had in the second half of the season, right? A lot of people were high on the Ducks. This is just another reason for people to be high on them, as they bring in the second winningest coach in NHL history. Joel Quenneville is officially back. Also, in the last couple of days, Rick Tocchet, it's announced he's going to be hired by the Philadelphia Flyers. The deal is not officially official, but it's all but that at this point. Everyone knows he's going to be the next head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. And Adam Foote is going to be the next head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. So those are 3 head coaching jobs that are now off of the market, and that only leaves 4 teams left without a head coach, our Chicago Blackhawks obviously being one of them. For Rick Tocchet, I outlined Tocchet. I had a full episode about whether the Blackhawks, he would be a good candidate for them. I didn't really think so. While he does have some good experience, and I don't think he would have been the worst candidate, I had him at like number 5 on my list. Hasn't really had all that much success in the winning department. And also, I know Arizona, when he was the head coach there, was a dumpster fire, but had a couple of years to kind of help turn things around there, and it didn't necessarily go swimmingly under his leadership. So I was never really all that intrigued in Rick Tocchet. I'm not someone who's personally stung by seeing him going to the Philadelphia Flyers, and Adam Foote isn't someone who was ever really on my radar for the Blackhawks job either. So kind of just seeing other teams get moving on this, get the ball rolling, while the Blackhawks still haven't, what's interesting for the Blackhawks is there haven't been any releases about them doing interviews. Like, they've kept it super tight-lipped, and that's what a lot of beat writers for the Hawks are saying. Like, they haven't heard any leaks whatsoever. It's kind of impressive how sealed they've kept everything up. So I've talked about on the show, it's weird how we haven't heard like certain guys getting interviews or anything getting leaked really about this Blackhawks coaching search. That's obviously being done on purpose and puts me in a little bit of a tough spot because now I'm just left speculating about who their next head coach could be. I'm still sticking with, I think, Todd Nelson at this point, with David Carl out of the mix, Mike Sullivan out of the mix. We know Bednar's not leaving Colorado. Cooper's not leaving Tampa Bay. Todd Nelson would be my number one guy. But curious, the Blackhawks are one of those final four teams left yet to name their next head coach. I'm sure that's not a bad thing, Blackhawks fans. Like, some people are probably going to make it out to be. I know Kyle Davidson has a plan. I'm sure it was shaken up a little bit considering Carl, who I firmly believe was their number one guy they had circled, is no longer available. I think that left them having to pivot a little bit and really focus in on who they truly want to name their new head coach, if they're going to be doing that here this summer. And that's why I think they've kept things so closed door and have taken a little bit longer than we necessarily expected, or even longer than Kyle Davidson first outlined when he talked to the media during his exit interview. But there is the latest on the coaching front all across the NHL. Coach Q, the new head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, as he's officially back in the NHL. Rick Tocchet going to be the next head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. And then Adam Foote expected to be the next head coach of the Vancouver Canucks as well. The Chicago Blackhawks, it's tight-lipped there in the organization. If we get any updates, I'll provide them right here on Locked On Blackhawks. But that's going to take care of today's episode, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me. Make sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Check me out on X at Jack Bushman2 and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way, you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.